Hello Gobs and welcome to this week's episode of RPG Stories. Trying something new, I'll be reading a long one for this episode, and then if I have time at the end, I'll go ahead and read a short one. If not, I'll just move that short one to next week. But for those of you who don't know what this is, I'm going to either my subreddit or the RPG horror subreddit, and I'm going to read some stories, or today, story. Who knows? We'll see. But once I am done reading the story, I will give advice or what I would do in this situation. So make sure you check that disclaimer at the start, and as a forewarning, these may or may not be real, but it's not for me to decide, and even if they are fake, they still make good stories to give advice on. I am the Goblin King. I do RPG content. Click on my name to find out my trailer. And let's get into today's story, or stories. You'll have to see. Actually, you'll know because you can see how long this video is, and I can't, so let's just get to reading. Well, first we have to do the title. Our story, or maybe our first story, comes from Dinner After 6492. DM used my IRL grief in-game. So, I posted part of this to a D&D Reddit the other day, but a member told me this was in fact a horror story. I've since debriefed and started to process this with other D&D friends outside of the campaign and realized how messed up it was. The brunt of it is that late last year I had received news that my auntie had gotten sick and would be passing away. It was cancer, it was developed. And though she tried her hardest to fight it, she is no longer with us. I myself had been diagnosed the year before in the same month. I've been in remission for a year now. It is a very difficult thing to live with that. I think about it a lot that I am so here and she is not. Wow, I didn't expect the story to start off so real. I read the title. I don't even know if I want to read this anymore. No. I think this would be an important lesson, so I'm going to read this. I hate the thought of capitalizing on someone else's suffering or grief, but I feel like for the sake of the story, it's also good to get this type of stuff out there so people know not what to do in the middle of a game. So I'm going to keep reading, but if OP sees this and doesn't want to see this up, then I would definitely take down the video. But then why would you keep reading it? Because I feel like people need to see certain lessons that other people have gone through so they know not to make these same mistakes in their games as well. So I am very sorry this happened to you and that you're going through this. I, myself, I'm also going through something similar, okay? It's not the reason for my absence, but, it's been a thing for a year or so. Not myself, but a family member, so I also can get where this person is coming from. But, sorry, Gob got a bit real there. I do really sincerely mean everything that I say, although I can't prove that to you guys. That is up for you guys to decide if I'm being sincere or not, so that is entirely up to you. So, let's just read the story to find out what happened. But this story really does start days after I had received news of her diagnosis. Some context. The campaign had been going for around 6 months at the time. We had a big party shift, with 3 new players added who are the DM's close friends, but I was one of the last remaining original party players for this campaign. I joined this session late due to some scheduling conflicts with everything that was happening. I hadn't realized I had double booked 2 D&D campaigns. The previous session had ended with a particular problem player initiating combat without the party's permission, and by the time I had joined, we were in the thick of it. My character goes down, and on my first saving throw, I roll 1. Instant death. Instant death? Did you already have a death saving throw failed already? And don't death saving throws reset after a little bit? It's been a while since I've played D&D, so I don't know what edition this is either, but I don't think a 1 is instant death. I think a 1's 2 failed death saving throws, so I'm assuming they've had 1 previously, and this led to their immediate death. Anyways, let's keep reading. I was crushed. The DM knew about what was going on IRL. I'd let him know because I knew if D&D got too real, it would hit me hard. Of course, no one ever sees a character's death coming, but it was what came after that really sucked. So that night I cried. A lot. It hit me that I was likely going to lose my aunt, like I had lost my D&D character who had become such a comfort of mine. And then the DM messages me, offering to resurrect my character. At first I was going to say no, because bringing back my character was not going to fix the real pain of knowing I was losing my aunt. But my friends outside of the campaign said that maybe keeping her on would be better, that the change was too big and that I needed consistency during this time. So my OC was going to be revived, but not like a simple reverse. Her revival turned into a quest for the party. And suffice to say, role-playing grief and loss while seeing my aunt's health going down was not the fantasy escapism I needed. But stupidly, I just kept going no matter how much DM sat there bringing up my character's dead body that was being carried around. Because yeah, that was a part of the plot. Cut to my character's revival, spectacularly right after my aunt's passing. The DM knew this. My character had a moment in the afterlife where she sees her mum. Now, my DM knew that my auntie was my other mum. I had actually used this exact phrase around him. I would also like to say that I wanted my character's family status to be left ambiguous since she was a traveler. But no, my character's mum had to be dead and meet my character in the afterlife now. If I'm being honest, I don't remember a lot of the moment anymore because I was actually starting to dissociate during it. I remember him asking if my character had anything she wanted to say to her mother if she could. Now I thought about my auntie. I began to cry and just said, "I miss you." It was not cathartic. It made me feel like my grief had been used as a display for roleplay. And when I was crying, his friends began hassling me to turn on the camera to see the tears. What? Excuse me? What? I'm honestly befuddled right now. Let's keep reading. Maybe there's an explanation? What? I can't even remember what happened. I just remember being asked to recap all the next session and the call ended, and sitting in my room crying because I missed her so much. While I understand the DMs never intended for player characters to die, I really do not feel that he needed to hammer my character's death into the plot. And not only that, but asking for boundaries given the context of what was going on would have made this avoidable. He never told his friends off for the camera comments, he never checked with me on my character's mom being dead, nothing. He never even asked if I was okay or needed a moment when I was crying at my character's death and also her talk with her mom. TLDR, mother figure passes away, DM reveals character's mom is dead without warning for roleplay, and then we have a note here. To those telling me to leave the campaign, I am. I'm kind of going MIA with it and just putting myself as unavailable. I don't want to bring the issue up with the DM because it has shown me a bit of emotional immaturity. I'm sitting here in silence after this story. I cut it all out. I'm just bewildered, befuddled, shocked, surprised after all of this. Now, I don't think, for the most part, starting out, the DM intentionally, for all of this to happen, to have this go down like this. It kind of, to me, feels like kind of just a mistake, but then when the DM first saw that the player was uncomfortable and they knew this was all happening, then maybe they should have just skipped this entire plot point, especially if they were planning on having the character's mom be there. Especially if they knew everything that was happening with OP and they still decided to go through with this after knowing everything that is happening. I'm talking in circles, but hear me out. They knew what was happening and they still decided to do all of this. Kind of shifted from being an accident, because people wanting the player to get resurrected from death to be an adventure or a quest in of itself. That's nothing new. In fact, that can add to the story, but you should also give your person that's being revived another character to play, like a fill-in NPC or something along the lines, so that they're also doing something. That's just a little side thing. But if you're just sitting there in the session, if the resurrection isn't going to happen in that session, then you shouldn't really, I think, be sitting there, because you don't want to sit there and do nothing. But I don't know if they said how long it was between their character dying and the actual resurrection and then having this afterlife moment. Really? Really? Did you really have to have this afterlife moment? I know they wanted it to be a quest, but for the sake of what was happening in real life, this feels really inept. It feels really, what's the word? Blinded? Deaf? Tone deaf. It feels really tone deaf to have all of this happening while OP was going through all of this. So my advice is check on your players, make sure they're okay. And the fact that the DM didn't check on them as they were hearing them cry and not telling their friends off for wanting to turn on the camera to see if OP was crying. Excuse me? That part really gets me. That I cannot think of why they would ever why would they want to see that? Did they think that OP was fake crying or something? I mean, the DM should have gave them like a little talk outside the session. They didn't have to tell them everything that was going on with OP, but like, hey, OP's going through something right now, so be on your best behavior, guys. You know, something around there. But this really just shows that the DM is kind of just unsympathetic. So yeah, I guess the good thing would have been not to show up, just to leave the campaign and try to find a different outlet, which is way easier said than done when you're going through this. In fact, I kind of had a similar thing happen to me in one of my games, which is a horror story in of itself, which I'm saving for a later date. It was all because of a problem player, and I was going through some IRL stuff similar to what OP was going through. And yeah, when stuff like that's happening, it kind of just crashes down on you without warning, because you wanted to escape. So you're like, oh, I'll just go play this game. And then something happens in the game, or like something goes amiss, or somebody does something, and you know, either they know it or they don't know it, or they're just being hard-headed about it. I'm talking more about my story, but you know, they didn't know what was happening with me IRL, and then it kind of just crashes down on you. And I finished the session teary-eyed, and we all went home quietly, and yeah, it wasn't for the best. So, but luckily we moved on past that now. I'll tell the story at a later time. I guess I just want more people to hear it, but I'll eventually tell my horror stories. Maybe be like an episode 50 thing, but that's not the focus. Okay, the focus is that if your players are going through something IRL, you should try to do your best to not include those topics in the game, because you're like, oh, maybe they shouldn't show up at all. Maybe because character dev isn't a guaranteed, but it could still happen in a game like D&D. Or maybe you guys need to play something more chill, more relaxed. There's a slew of chill RPGs that a person can play that doesn't include heavy topics to easily avoid something that is happening in the game. Might I suggest Fabula Ultima? In that one, characters don't really die. The only time a character would die is that they would have to willingly sacrifice their hero once the hero goes down, and then they get like a final act that they can do. That's the only time. Any other time, they go down and they're removed from scene. And then if everybody goes down, then you have like your party get captured or whatever, or some type of something in the story, rather than everybody dying and having to make new characters. So Fabula Ultima is really chill. Ryutama is really chill too. That game is just a cozy game about traveling. There's combat in there, but death isn't like super hardcore. It is just a simple, nice, cozy adventure about traveling. A lot of shenanigans can happen with your traveling roles and setting up all of that. There's like an inventory management aspect to it, and it can be really fun and scratch that itch for certain people. So Ryutama is really chill, and there's a slew of other RPGs that you can do if you need an escape. And remember, you don't only have to use RPGs. You guys could just, well, this was over online. I'm thinking about IRL. I was like, you guys could just sit down and play board games, but this is online. So, but there are like other things that you can do. I know this is kind of like an escapism, but once the character died, and yeah, hindsight's 2020. Like, it's easy for us to sit back and like, well, maybe you shouldn't have just shown up at all. But when you're going through grief and the potential for loss and loss itself, you don't make the most sane of decisions, because you're just not there. And then to just have all of this happen, it really is awful. So I'm glad that OP is leaving this campaign, and I hope they either talk to the DM and maybe, I don't want to say talk to him, I don't want to also say just outright block them and just move on. I feel like some type of talking needs to happen just to vent your, not maybe frustrations, but to talk about what happened, and maybe the DM can learn from this experience to never put a player in that position again. But at the same time, if you're not up for that, if you're not confrontational, then you're perfectly valid with blocking them and just moving on. Look at that, we have time for one more story. I'm definitely not recording this way after editing with all the devices on. Let's just move on to our final story. And this is a much shorter one, and hopefully it's a palate cleanser in a way. Stop being so real for a moment and maybe something just a bit more lighthearted, but let's find out. With horror stories, you never know how lighthearted they're going to be. So, our last story comes from Subnati Electrico. I hope I said that right. AITA! For wanting to kill my friend's characters because I can't handle his demands anymore. Ooh, it's an AITA post. This is my third one of doing these. So let's find out if OP, AITA, or ITA, one of two. I'm the DM of a Paranormal Order campaign that has been running for about 5 years. Since the beginning, I've been playing with a childhood friend. I'll call him Ash. We had a 1-year hiatus, and when we came back, he was very set on playing a specific character he really likes. Since then, he's been doing everything he can to keep the character alive. In this new phase of the campaign, which was more of a survival horror tone, he constantly makes metagame decisions just to keep his character alive, even when it breaks immersion. I let it slide for a long time because we've been friends since childhood. The issue is that since the character survived, she ended up being part of multiple campaigns, and over time he started making more and more suggestions about the story, usually pushing the focus towards his character. For context, she's basically an edgy combat character, kind of an alcoholic with an 80s rock aesthetic. At first, I went along with it to keep things smooth, but in the last session, it crossed the line. He started treating his suggestions like obligations, as if I had to include them in the campaign. On top of that, he made several negative comments about the session, saying my DMing doesn't lead anywhere, while at the same time making decisions that completely clash with the group and the tone of the campaign. He also complained multiple times about me introducing new characters and said he'd rather the session focus on him and another player from his team. Basically, he spent a lot of time questioning my decisions as the DM. To make things worse, he has already told me that if his character dies, he'll stop playing in my campaigns in this setting. Toxic! Honestly, this has been really exhausting, and I've started considering just killing his character in-game to avoid dealing with the situation anymore. At the same time, I know that might be unfair and too personal. So, AITA for wanting to do this. Well, before we go straight into the device, let's answer this question. Are they the a-hole? Well, that's usually what I would do, but I think we kind of have to talk about the story as a whole. Now this, as I mentioned, sounds really toxic. If you kill my character, I'm just going to leave your campaigns and never play it again. Are you sure this is your childhood friend? I don't really think that's like a friend thing to do. Now some friends are better just to be friends, but they are terrible at playing TTRPGs or board games or specific board games and specific TTRPGs with. But they're still a really good friend, they just suck to play with at these games. And this might be the same issue here. Sounds like this friend, well, obviously, main character syndrome, especially from not wanting OP to introduce other characters into the session. You know NPCs are a thing, right? I don't know how this TTRPG's Paranormal Order plays, but I'm pretty sure most TTRPGs are going to have NPCs that the DM needs to introduce in order for the characters to interact with in order for the story to move along, and this person does not like the sound of that. They need the story to be about their character and their character alone. Buddy, how's the story going to be about your character if they don't have other characters to interact with? Even when you're trying to be a main character, it sounds like you suck at being a main character. This is why it's multiplayer. Everyone gets to input, not just one person deciding everything for everyone. Even if that's technically what a DM does, the DM should still take what the players are doing and have that impact the story in some way. Whether it's fighting or investigating or what have you. So would be killing the character would it be a-hole-ish? No, I don't think so. Would it be the first thing you should do? No, I wouldn't say killing the character. Normally, you would want to talk outside of the game because you don't really solve a lot of issues by doing stuff in-game. Killing the character in-game, well, if it holds true to the word, they'll just get up and leave. So I guess the problem makes itself exit, but you should really sit down and talk to your friend, your childhood friend, about how this makes you feel and how you're probably not having fun with the way they're playing, and that's the main thing about this, is you want to have fun, and if you're not having fun, then you probably shouldn't play in the first place. Remember, no TTRPGs is better than a bad TTRPG, or whatever the saying. I know it's D&D, but whatever. This is Paranormal Order. This ain't no D&D, so no TTRPG is better than a bad TTRPG. If it's to the point that they're not willing to change, then it might be better just to move on. Make them leave, or find new players. Even if they're your childhood friends, you guys can still be friends while playing TTRPGs with other people. That's also another thing that's way easier said than done. Like, you can just magically whisk away and find a new table. It's not going to be easy. You can look online. You can try to look IRL, depending on your location. I know for me, I live in the middle of nowhere, but I don't really reach out to other people. So there might be tons of great players in my area, and I never know because I just don't reach out. But that will be it. So, AITA for wanting to do this. Drum roll. No, obviously not ATA for wanting to do this, but I think you should do something else before you jump to that. And then if it doesn't fix, just do it. Just kill them, just for that heck of it. Make them leave if that's what they're gonna do, because you don't need that in your campaign. So, what do you think about these stories? What do you think about this video? Let me know in the comments what you would have done differently. And thank you to the OPs. Once again, I am sorry to the first OP of the first story that you're going through all of that. But thank you for uploading your story to help make other people, hopefully they learn to not include stuff like that in their game when someone's going through that. But thank you to the other OP for uploading your story. Thank you everybody who uploads on the subreddits. And thank you viewers, yes you staring at the screen or listening to me and playing your game on your second monitor. Thank you for letting me be on your second monitor, or however you're watching me. I don't know, but thank you for watching. And this has been the Goblin King. Click on my name to find out the other type of content I upload to this channel, which I'm doing shortly. I actually do have stuff in the works. I got stuff. I'm doing stuff. So check it out. If that interests you, subscribe. And then, if you liked this video, leave a like. If you hated it, dislike it. I don't know. Do whatever you want. I can't control your actions. I'm just the goblin. I'm the Goblin King. I might be the king, but I can't order you to do something except have a lop of a day. So, I hope you gobs have a lop of a day, and may your adventures be free from tone-deaf people. Come on, guys, read the room.